Good morning and welcome to Le Mag. My name is Maling Balou and I'm delighted to welcome you on this show. You're actually watching us live on MBC TV and listening to us on RM1. Today we're going to dive deep into something that truly affects us all, basically how we communicate, how we make decisions and how we connect with others in an increasingly complex world. With me today, ladies and gentlemen, is Yogesh Sharda, a remarkable man whose journey has taken him from Malawi to London, Oxford, and now across 6 continents as one of the world's leading personal development trainers. For over 30 years, Yogesh has been transforming lives, from Microsoft executives to university students, from major corporations like IBM and Siemens to actually local community groups. Yogesh, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How are you doing today?
Really well. Very happy to be here in Mauritius.
Is it your first time here?
It is.
How do you find our country?
It's fabulous. I've just been here 3 days, but nature's amazing and the people are wonderful. And I have 6 more days. Looking forward to the rest of my trip.
The warmth of the Mauritian people, that's what we say. Now, before we dive in, I have to ask, 30 years of training people across the globe, what keeps you passionate about this work?
I feel this is the best thing I can do in terms of contributing to the world. As we know, there are so many problems in the world, international, national, community level, people's personal problems. And so I've been studying self-awareness, meditation, etc. most of my life. And I feel the most useful thing I can do is to share this understanding and education with people to make a real positive difference in their own lives.
That's beautiful. Give back to the community. So, Yogesh, today we want to focus on 3 areas where you've seen the most transformation: effective communication, emotional intelligence, and decision making. So let's start with the foundation. You've trained, I mentioned in the introduction, ladies and gentlemen, you've trained everyone from Microsoft executives to university students across 6 continents. That's not nothing. So in our digital age with WhatsApp, emails, video calls, why do you think effective communication has become more challenging than ever?
We do communicate a lot on these digital platforms, but the human-to-human communication, that seems to be suffering, even in families. So I think today there is an epidemic of loneliness and also boredom. People feel disconnected even from family members. And one of the reasons for that is there is a disconnect between the self and the self. People's self-relationship is suffering, and due to that, they use something or someone as a substitute in their relationship with themselves. And therefore, it creates a dependency upon technology to, instead of talking to myself, I look at something on screen instead.
So basically, technology has given us speed and convenience, but it's stripped away context.
Well, technology hasn't done that. Technology is amazing. It's wonderful. But we have to be the master of technology, not the slave of it.
And how do we do that?
That is by also paying attention to our inner technology. That's the thing. There is a world outside of us, an amazing world, but there's a world inside us. And as I was growing up as a kid, I was already doing meditation. I was surprised at how little attention people pay to their inner world. And because of this imbalance between attention to the outer and the inner, there is stress, there is tension, problems in relationships, and even global problems.
And that's quite sobering in a way, because you think about people having bigger problems, deeper issues in the world, and now we're here talking to each other, people having fun as well. So you have both in the world, the joy, sadness. So how do we make it with all this?
Yeah, well, the thing is that even with the joy, I say what we want is a long-lasting joy, rather than joy today, sorrow tomorrow. Today, you're wonderful. Tomorrow, I hate you. All these ups and downs. And so I would use this term. We want to move from emotional happiness to happiness as a feeling.
All right.
These 2 things are very different. Today, generally, people experience emotional happiness, emotional love, and that goes up and down. But when it's a feeling, it's in your hands. It belongs to you.
So you have the power to change your future. And you all need to change your mindset.
Well, I would say that life is ultimately a mind game. It's a game of thoughts. And if you know how to manage your mind, take care of your mind, life begins to feel like a game.
Mm. And what's the biggest communication mistake you see leaders making today in
Uh,
2025?
Not listening.
Not listening.
Yeah, what people do is, let's say you're talking to me,
Yes,
for example. I hear the first few words of what you're saying, and the rest of the time you're speaking, I'm busy preparing my response to you.
true.
So then I'm not listening to you, I'm
Mm.
listening to me,
Mm.
preparing my response to you. And because of not listening
Mm.
properly, there is miscommunication, there is misunderstanding, and then there are conflicts, both in terms of personal, individual life, also at the global level.
Mm.
Same thing is happening.
And how can we change that?
Well, for me, meditation is talking to myself, listening to myself, coming together,
Mm.
integrating with my own self.
Mm.
So when I'm at peace with my own self, then I'm available, emotionally available, to listen to what you're really trying to tell me.
And to move forward, there's a concept that you mentioned in one of your interviews on YouTube. You call this the golden triangle.
Yeah.
Listen first, understand second, then respond. So I really like that. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, well, again, it's all about making your mind quiet. You see, if my mind is quiet, then I can allow you to share what you want to say to me. And that means two things. One is listening to your words,
Mm-hmm.
but then listening to how you are feeling
Mm.
as you are speaking. So if I really understand you, and that's called active listening, what you're saying and what you're feeling, then I can respond appropriately.
Exactly. Now you've worked across cultures from Europe to Asia to the Americas. How do cultural differences impact effective communication?
Yeah, in some places, like mostly in Asian countries, people don't say too much when you're speaking. Sometimes, for example, in a seminar, I like to make it interactive. I ask a question, nobody replies.
Mm. You have to make it lively. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah. In the Asian cultures, people more like to absorb
True,
information,
true.
whereas more in sort of Europe and America, people would ask a question. They'll raise their hand. They say, "Can I ask
It's true, I
something?"
get that. I do a
Yeah.
lot of corporate emceeing,
Yeah.
and you see the difference depending on where the people come from.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I have to respect all cultures because people are different, and everywhere in the world there are plus points and minus points. And there's something to learn from each culture, I find.
Adaptability seems to be the key, isn't it, Yogesh?
Well, there is a saying even in the business world, adapt or die,
Adapt or perish.
adapt or perish.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Can you share a specific example where poor communication was costing a company dearly?
Well, there are so many, but as a
But if you had to
general,
choose one.
yeah, I mean, I would say as a general example where uh, bosses or leaders don't listen to the real needs of their employees, and so this creates conflict,
Mm.
amongst the employees, and then they develop bitterness towards the leadership for not really addressing the issues. People start quitting, people start underperforming, or people do this thing called
Mm.
quiet quitting. They don't work as hard as they used to.
They're not as passionate anymore.
And the bosses find it difficult to replace them
True.
because they get labeled as this person is not easy to work for,
Mm.
and the company suffers as a result.
Definitely. Um, Now, our listeners and our viewers maybe are probably thinking, that sounds great, you're right? But what can I do right now? Can you give us one technique our audience can use immediately to improve their communication today?
Yeah. First is, as I say, before you start speaking, first listen, make your mind quiet. So there are some simple methods to make your mind quiet. We call these as traffic control for your mind. Slow down the thought traffic. These are
Mm.
visualization or simple meditative practices where you go to a quiet space inside yourself. It's a visualization. Go to the quiet room inside your mind. Be there for a few minutes. Experience the peace there, the silence there, the calm there. Enjoy the sweetness of that silence. And then when you come out of it, your mind is quiet and your emotions will not disturb you in listening to someone. and then you can respond appropriately.
And should we do this on a daily basis?
Absolutely. I would say that start the day by charging your inner battery,
So,
your
what will
mind
be the
battery.
ideal frequency?
Well, every day in the morning, that's for sure. And then during the day,
Mm-hmm.
if you can, one mid-morning, one mid-afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And these mini meditations during the day can just be 3 minutes, for example. But then also at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
how to finish the day, put the mind to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, parents would read a bedtime story to a
Yeah.
child, so the child sleeps well.
Mm.
The same way,
True.
talk to the mind, let go of the thoughts of the day,
Mm.
let the mind rest, because the mind is a child.
Mm.
It needs to be looked after.
Definitely. That's beautifully said, actually. I'm all into it. There's something you mentioned as well in one of your interviews, the echo technique. So before you respond to anyone, let it be your spouse, your boss, your child, repeat back when you heard them say not word for word, but the essence. So what I'm hearing is let me make sure I understand before going forward, before analyze the situation, and then reply to them appropriately and accordingly. That's what you just said. And it takes basically 10 seconds, but it prevents 90% of misunderstanding.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, our aim is not just to use these techniques, but to make it a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So if your mind is always calm and balanced and present, you're always ready to respond to a situation. And that's where I find practices like meditation make it into a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Like a habit.
Yeah, it's like, for example, you use your arms and your legs when you want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's in your control. In the same way, the mind is one of my non-physical organs. I should be able to use it and then rest it at will. But that's where practice is needed.
That's it. I'm definitely trying that, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's move to something equally crucial. Yogesh, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is one of your key specialties. For someone who's never heard of this term, how would you explain this and what it actually means?
Yeah, there's no one set definition, but basically speaking, it's about knowing how to understand and manage your own emotions, and therefore to be able to understand how other people are feeling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
If I can manage my own emotions, I won't project them onto another person. So that's one thing.
mm-hmm.
Secondly, for example, you have a bad mood, or for example, you get angry or you get upset. How quickly can I lift myself up out of that?
True.
That's a measure of EQ. Then, thirdly, knowing how to attribute correct meaning to an event to be in charge of my emotions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Being charged. That's the most important. And therefore, simple abilities recognize your emotions as they happen, manage those emotions effectively, recognizing emotions in others, and using all of this information to build better relationship. It's something simple, when we say it like that, but it's not as simple to do, isn't
Well,
it?
the harder something is, the greater is the reward. Plus, plus, what else is there to do? What's missing in the world today
Yeah.
is humans having a good relationship with themselves and with each other. We
So
have technology, we have science, but what about getting along with each other?
exactly. So basically, what makes it powerful is that it's learnable. EQ is learnable compared to IQ.
I would say so, but also I would say that this is a return journey. I think that every person's real innate nature is actually very good,
Mm-hmm.
very beautiful, very pure, but we have lost that. And now it's a time to make that return journey back
Back.
to being at peace, back to being happy, being able to show love and respect.
Back to being a whole again, let's put it that way. You've trained actually at major corporations like IBM and Siemens. How does emotional intelligence translate differently in high pressure business environments versus, let's say, educational settings?
Yeah, obviously in business environments, profit and time, all of those things are vital. So people want to learn how to be de-stressed, basically. In educational settings, a little bit different. Of course, teachers do a great job and it's very demanding as well. but the pressure of performing and going to meetings
Mm-hmm.
and flying somewhere for a meeting, going somewhere else, that same pressure is not there. The same time pressure may be there, may not be there. The workload may be there. But teachers also have a hard time dealing with children
Mm-hmm.
today,
True.
so managing their own emotions, especially anger,
Uh-huh.
is a big issue for a lot of people.
And what are the warning signs that someone lacks emotional intelligence?
They get angry easily. They get into mood.
Irritated?
Yeah,
Very irritated.
that's a form of anger.
Yeah.
Also feeling upset or being in a bad mood for a long period of time, holding on to grudges and bitterness, not allowing the past to be the past, um,
Living in the past.
living in the past, carrying a wounded ego around with you, shutting down communication with other people, suppressing your own anger. All of these are unhealthy behaviors.
Definitely. So the good news is once people recognize these patterns in themselves, they can make the change quite easily afterwards.
Yeah, I mean,
Is it easy? Really?
well, I mean, everything is easy, but you take the first step is important. It's
Mm.
like with anything new you do, whether it's fixing your car or, something's wrong with your physical health, you need to do something. Taking the first step, and then gradually it becomes easier and easier, and it becomes a lifestyle.
Slowly but surely, indeed. We all know someone that has like emotional intelligence issues. Tell us about a breakthrough moment you personally witnessed. Perhaps someone who transformed their leadership style through developing emotional intelligence. An example you would like to share with our viewers and our listeners here
Well, there
today.
was there was one group I was in, and there was a team of about 8 people, and then one lady joined the team. She was an additional member. We all found her a bit challenging
Hmm.
because she was the kind of person who finishes sentences other people have started. You know, quite
Yeah.
hyper, a little bit dominant in the meetings. So we all found her difficult. But especially one particular supervisor was always kind of clashing with her.
Okay.
And then after quite some
He was
time,
finding it difficult to cope with her.
yeah, they were always like arguing.
Mm.
And then this supervisor said to me
Mm.
once, I've realized what I'm doing wrong.
Mm.
Because supervisor was slow and this lady was fast in everything. He realized that I have not accepted her as she is.
Mm.
And therefore, in my mind,
Mm.
I'm energetically
Mm.
rejecting her. She's picking up on that rejection
Mm.
and it's making her worse. So he started to accept that this is how this person is at the moment. Let me not be judgmental.
Mm.
Let me not reject her. And he was giving a very different attitude towards her.
Yeah.
Her behavior changed and then began to get along very well together.
It's interesting. That's a powerful transformation indeed. Thank you for sharing that today here on the NBC TV and also live on RMA, the radio, the NBC radio rebranding. In your own journey from Malawi to London to becoming a global trainer, how has your emotional intelligence evolved?
Yeah, it's probably a good question to ask people who know me.
No, but basically from your point of view.
Yeah, I would say in essence, there's been a growth in self-respect, which I think is the most fundamental thing in the human life
Hmm.
experience. So knowing myself, understanding myself, accepting myself, developing confidence in myself.
Staying true to yourself.
Yeah, being more authentic. So I'd say all of those things
Okay.
has helped me in my self-relationship and therefore my relationships with other people too.
Definitely, and especially growing up between cultures, I'm sure that taught you early that the same emotion can be expressed very differently. You mentioned that
Yeah,
when we're talking about conferences
yeah,
earlier, you have to adapt to your public because everybody doesn't have the same. I mean,
yeah,
the people don't have the same sort of culture,
yeah,
upbringing. So it's adapt or perish.
yeah. And as we were mentioning, in some cultures they're very expressive. In the Mediterranean where I live, people tend to be very expressive, over-expressive sometimes. In other places, like some Northern European countries, people are not so expressive, more suppressive, but they still have feelings. It's just that they're not being expressed. So some people are too much one way, some too much the other way. And we have to learn, I think, how to be balanced
Okay.
to
And
be
how do we
healthy.
learn this? Should we do our own research beforehand, before visiting a country, for instance? I mean, trying to have the maximum information on the culture before going there and actually meeting its people, or what would you suggest?
That's a good thing. I mean, wherever you go, it's good to find out a bit about the culture, the background, the influences in order to relate better and respect their culture as
Mm-hmm.
well. But always to keep yourself in a state of ever readiness,
Okay.
to stay humble, to stay alert, to continue to have a learning attitude wherever you go.
That's refreshingly honest. What's a simple daily practice our audience can adopt to strengthen their emotional intelligence? I mean, you mentioned a few key points earlier, but apart from these points,
Yeah. Well, one is this that we call it the SOS.
what's
Stand.
the SOS?
It stands for stand back, observe, and steer. So, for
Right.
example, let's say you're feeling angry, and
Take
you
a step back.
step back mentally, emotionally. Step back, and how to step back is you tell yourself, okay, I am feeling angry, but I am not angry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling angry at the moment. With practice, it helps you to stand back from the emotion.
Okay.
Then observe to see now, why was I feeling
Mm.
angry? Okay, maybe it was because of what this person said to me
Mm.
1 hour ago,
Mm.
or maybe because of some situation which happened. So you're observing to see why that emotion is
Mm-hmm.
there. Third is to steer, redirect your thoughts to another
Mm.
direction. For example, telling yourself, the way somebody speaks to me is his or her choice, but the way I feel
The way I
is
respond
my
to that,
choice.
definitely.
Am I taking charge of how I want to feel, or am I concerned with how somebody is speaking to me?
Mm-hmm.
So telling your mind, let's go in this direction,
Mm.
steering your thoughts away from the finger pointing towards the other.
So pause, reflect, and redirect.
Yes, or the SOS is another way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Stand back, observe, and steer.
Mm,
Yeah.
brilliant advice. Thank you for this, Yogesh. Now let's talk about something we all struggle with, the decision making challenge. Decision making is something we do all do hundreds of times a day, yet many people they do struggle with major decisions. So what's your philosophy on effective decision making?
Yeah. There are many techniques you can find on the net about different types of decision making. But what I would like to suggest, and it's something I talk about a lot, is this that there's one faculty in our self which is called our intellect. That's responsible for discernment
Mm-hmm.
and decision making. Then there's something else called the mind. The mind is like a child which produces thoughts, desires, and emotions. The intellect is like the parent. When we find it difficult to make decisions, largely it's because of the mind is overactive,
Mm-hmm.
not allowing the intellect to work properly. So the thing to do is to learn how to make the mind quiet. And when the mind is quiet, then you can listen to your inner wisdom guiding you in your decision making
Mm-hmm.
process. It'll be a natural, instinctive, intuitive ability to make decisions if the mind is quiet. Secondly, to practice thought economy.
All right.
Yeah? Now, we all pay attention to how much money we spend because we value it.
Mm.
But more important than the money in our pockets are the thoughts in our minds.
Mm.
And if we choose to spend our thought energy more economically, more wisely, the intellect gets stronger in
Exactly.
our
We should
ability.
clear all the negative thoughts
Yeah, and try to
firsthand.
reduce. Like, for example, if I take 50 thoughts to think about something, can I do that in 30 thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Can I save the energy of my inner self? And that energy accumulates in the mind as what we call as the power of inner silence.
Mm-hmm.
And that enhances abilities like listening, decision making, and so on.
Everything else follows and flows. You've
Yeah.
trained organizations facing critical business decisions. What's the difference between how successful business leaders make decisions versus those who struggle?
Well, again, I think one is listening and creating a team. You can't be successful by yourself. You need people around you to help you and support you. And there I would say
Together we're stronger, indeed.
I would say there's two things there. One is there is the kind of warrior leader who stands at the front and tells people what to do. And if you don't do it, he will hit you in some way or the other. And he leads by intimidation, by fear, and by force. And he needs to protect himself. But then there's the other type of leader, which I would suggest is more successful in the long term.
Yes.
That's the servant leader. Servant leader doesn't need to say, I am the best, follow me. Other people say, you're the right person to follow. And the reason for that is servant leader has achieved what we call as the greatest of all achievements in this context. That is, he or she has won the hearts and minds of other people. And you do that not through gifts or through lavish speeches, but how you behave, how you treat people every day. So to treat people well, you have to be in charge of your own emotions. And therefore, self-management is very much connected to managing other people.
And now, what would be your definition of a truly successful leader?
Well, one who, in fact, creates other leaders, who empowers others to be the best that they can be, so that that leader even can leave the scene and make another team, and the team that he or she has created is able to self-manage and get along with each other. A true leader helps other people to believe in themselves, to stand on their own 2 feet, and to find their leadership potential.
Beautiful. How do emotions factor into good decision making? Help or hindrance?
As with everything, they need to be managed. Emotions, of course, can be very, very good. They can motivate you, but they need to be checked. If I'm over emotional, it will cloud my thinking, and I will not be able to see the big picture. I may over help someone, or I may be over responsible, which will make my ego feel good and make the other person feel good. But in the long term, it will create a dependency, and I won't allow you to stand on your own 2 feet.
And that's not natural. That's not fair.
Yeah, exactly. It feels good when someone's dependent upon you, but after a while, this dependency becomes a burden. And then you say, well, now do it yourself. But hang on, I haven't empowered you to do it yourself. So that part has to be taken care of.
That's practical wisdom. Thank you for that, Yogesh, right here. Can you walk us now through a decision-making framework that works in both personal and professional contexts? The best of both worlds.
Well, I would say first is always look at purpose. What is the aim of doing whatever we're doing here? Let's say we have to make a decision about doing something, going somewhere. What is the purpose here? Why do we want to go there? What are the positives and negatives of doing this thing?
What are the pros and cons?
Write it out. And I find writing is a very useful thing. If it's a group, put it up on a board. If it's personal, take a piece of paper, write things out. If you have things only in your mind, you can confuse yourself and reach a kind of, analysis paralysis condition. But when you see it on paper, you say, okay, this and this and this. And then you begin to circle the big plus points, the big minus points.
It becomes clearer.
Yeah. And then you can see what needs to be done. But I always start with purpose. That's the most important thing.
Purpose, that's the key factor for everything in our daily life or not, but also in our professional world. So let's get practical for our viewers and our listeners. Say, Yogesh, someone is facing a career change decision right now, right here. What 3 questions should they ask themselves?
Who am I? Where am I going? Why am I doing what I am doing?
Simple.
These are the deepest questions you can ask yourself. Because your career, ideally, should be a reflection of who you are. My doing should be a reflection of my being. And then you feel satisfied and happy in your job. If what you're doing does not match who you are, you'll feel some stress, and after a while you'll give up.
A sense of failure. So why do you think career decisions fail?
Again, because it's not connected with who I am, so the motivation is not there. There's 2 types of motivation here. I can just mention this part. There's emotional motivation, which is fast acting but short-lived. So, for example, somebody says, I'll give you more money,
Mm.
I'll give you a company car, I'll give you an office. Very quickly motivated, but it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
But the other is intrinsic or inner
Mm.
motivation. And that's based on doing this inner work
Mm.
of knowing who am I, why am I doing what I'm doing, where am I going. That
Exactly.
motivation is for your life, not just for your job. Yeah.
Who, why, and where. That's profound. Now, the elephant in the room. What about decisions we avoid making? How do you help these people? How do you help people overcome decision paralysis?
Yeah. The question is, what am I afraid of losing? Yeah. Why am I avoid making a decision? I'm afraid of losing something. In fact, you don't lose anything. This is going a bit more into the spiritual aspect of life, really understanding who or what is mine. The truth is, nothing is mine. If you live in this awareness,
Mm.
nothing is mine. If you live with the what we call as the law of cause and
Yes.
effect,
Then your perspective is different.
it's very different. And then the way you see life is very different as
Mm.
well. And even if you temporarily lose something, you have the quiet confidence at
Mm.
the right time, whatever I need will come to me.
Mm.
And so there is a great need to explore the laws of spirituality and
Mm.
how they work.
And what's your favorite technique? I mean, is it the regret minimization framework? Imagine yourself at 80 years old looking back now. Which would you regret more, trying and failing or never trying at all?
I'm hoping there's a third option, trying and succeeding.
I hope so. But right now, if you had these two options,
Which one would I regret more?
mm,
I think not trying at all.
not trying.
Yeah, I would succeed. I would regret not trying at all.
Mm-hmm,
Trying and failing,
mm-hmm,
I know would help me to try again or
mm.
to be better in my next try.
So you're listening to Le Mag and you're watching us live also on the MBC TV. I'm here with Yogesh Sharda and we have been having a fascinating conversation about communication, emotional intelligence and decision making. Yogesh, having worked from Turkey to Dubai, from universities to major corporations, what universal truths have you discovered about human development?
Basically, people want the same things wherever you go. Everybody wants peace of mind. Everybody wants happiness in their hearts. And everybody wants the exchange of love and respect in their relationships, regardless of culture,
Mm-hmm,
religion, nationality, age.
mm-hmm,
And if we can work on these things individually, it helps us to connect with people everywhere. Because at the end of the day, human beings are very similar. We're more similar than we are different.
true. How do you adapt your, I mean, we talked about this earlier. How do you adapt your training style now for different cultural context?
Yeah. The only differences really are in the way of presenting. As I mentioned before, some people like being asked questions and being interactive. Others don't like it. But I like to have a humanistic approach. I like to try and see the person as a person rather than he or she's from the Middle East or from Europe or from Africa or
Mm-hmm.
wherever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So just connecting with people, having a sense of humor, listening to their stories, and having a learning attitude. And I always tell them before I do a training that in this training, you learn something from
Mm-hmm.
me, I learn something
From
from
you.
you, and you will learn something from each other. So
Mm.
let's make this a collaborative and fun experience.
True.
So we come away with our hearts full and also our heads stimulated.
Beautiful. You've learned that principles are universal, but practices must be local. In Japan, for instance, they use more storytelling and metaphor. Direct confrontation is uncomfortable there. In Germany, people want research, data, scientific backing. In the Middle East, relationships and trust must be established before any learning can happen. But here's what's quite interesting in every culture. Once people feel safe, feel secure, and feel okay to be, in a way, vulnerable, the conversations become remarkably similar. So we are together as one, living in this world, just
Yeah.
on different continents.
Yeah, you put it very beautifully, those cultural differences. What I see is that there is a person inside, and then there are these layers of culture, nationality, religion, age, and so on. But behind all those layers,
There's an inner layer.
there's a being or there is
Mm.
a soul, there's a spiritual energy.
Mm.
And if I can connect with that, the being inside, the soul inside, then we have a connection, we
Yeah.
have a relationship, we can talk openly, we can work together. But today, what happens a lot, not just in business, but also in
Mm.
politics, is one person's ego talking to another person's
Exactly.
ego, and two heads are bashing each other. And there can never be a solution when heads try to crush each other.
Definitely. Talking about challenges, are there communication challenges that are uniquely modern, or are we dealing with the same fundamental human issues?
I mean, there are human issues, but I think they have become more deeply entrenched today for various reasons. And I think what's missing today is this word connection.
Mm.
You know, I like to work with this phrase
Because
connection.
everybody knows, I mean, they know this word connection, but do they really understand its meaning?
Yeah,
That's the whole question.
I like this phrase connection before solution, which means we may have a problem, but instead of trying to solve it first let's connect as
Mm.
human beings, as people. And if we feel connected with
Mm.
each other, it's easier to find a solution
Mm.
together. Otherwise, one person's arrogance trying to communicate or negotiate another person's arrogance, it's not going to work.
Definitely. And
You
then
know?
we have this digital problem. It can be a problem because we're dealing with digital body language. So, how when you read someone's tone in an email, you could say that that person is like that. But then when you meet that same
Yeah.
person elsewhere and then in the real life, your perspective changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what we tend to do is we put people in two places. One is somebody is where they actually are, and the other is they exist in my perception. And then I get busy feeding my perception of you. That when I actually meet you, you may be very different to my
True.
perception. And I may say to you, excuse me, can you please go back into the box I created for you? When my perception gets disturbed,
Mm.
I blame you,
Mm,
but
exactly.
it's my issue. And so there I have to understand that let me not be attached to my perception of you
Mm.
because you are uniquely who you are.
Mm, exactly. And it sounds like you're not just changing individuals, but entire organizational cultures, and you're changing the world, Yogesh Sharda. Is that so?
Well, I try to do what I can. I've been fortunate to learn a lot from
Mm-hmm.
some amazingly mature people. And I just feel that this is what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I am probably the first beneficiary of sharing these things because it reminds me of universal spiritual truths. And having the opportunity to share them is a
Mm.
blessing.
And this is why you're also passionate about your work. You're not just improving job performance or reducing conflicts, you're creating more compassionate, understanding human beings. The world desperately needs that right now in 2025. Now, Yogesh, let's get intensely practical. If someone listening today or watching the show could only focus on improving one skill apart from listening, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I would say it's learning to make your mind quiet, meditation. I really feel that
This is it.
every person needs to start the day with some silence time, or you may call it me
Mm-hmm.
time,
Mm-hmm.
or some meditation. Whatever you experience in the morning impacts the whole day. That's why people sometimes jokingly say if they're having a bad day, I must have got out of the wrong side of the bed this morning.
True, true.
So if you charge your soul battery first thing in the morning, it makes you emotionally stable, safe, and secure
Mm.
as you pass through the day.
Always think as well before speaking. That's a nice advice. How can parents watching us as well apply these principles to raise emotionally intelligent children?
Yeah, firstly, the parents need to do it themselves. You know, if a parent says to the child, "Be calm, don't fight with your brother," but they're fighting with each other or
Mm.
arguing, it's not going to work. Parents themselves need to be calm, learn to meditate. And I would suggest if you can dedicate one small room in your house
Mm-hmm.
or a corner of your room
Yeah.
for some daily simple meditation, you create an energy there, an atmosphere, which impacts the whole house.
Mm.
The children are observing the behavior of parents. If parents are calm, peaceful, learning to resolve issues, children learn from them.
Exactly. And
You
they
know?
will try to reproduce the same pattern afterwards with their own children. and that's how it goes, generation from one generation to another generation. Now, quick fire around now. Best way to handle difficult conversations,
Um, show
according
respect.
to Yogesh Sharda.
Respect is the key thing to change difficult into easy.
Mhm.
People need respect.
How to read a room effectively.
Make your mind quiet, and then your third eye is able to see the invisible, the emotions, the energy, the atmosphere in the room.
One technique for staying calm under pressure.
Go to the quiet room inside your mind and try to live from there. Try to
Mhm.
be there all the time.
So these are gold nuggets indeed. Now, as we look ahead with AI and technology changing how we interact, what role will emotional intelligence and human communication play in the
Yeah.
future? What's
Well,
your vision?
yeah. I mean, technologies have always been upgrading, of course, especially in the last 50, 60 years. AI is relatively new, but nobody quite knows where it's going. But still, human beings need human beings. We need to be respected, to be loved, to be cared for. And so those needs will never go away, and even for our mental and emotional, physical health, we need to keep working on nurturing those relationships, keep investing in yourself emotionally, keep investing in yourself spiritually.
Yeah,
That allows us to use AI for good and for
exactly.
benefit.
AI for Good. There's a festival that actually has this name,
Is
and
that
it's
right?
helping youngsters get used to AI and use AI in a positive way.
Yeah.
See positive in everything. Thank you so much for being here. It has been a pleasure having you on this show, Yogesh Sharda. This has been absolutely enlightening. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, and thank you for the incredible work you're doing around the world. Best of luck for what's to come for you.
Thanks for great questions and for everything you're doing. And it's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to you, dear viewers, and to our listeners listening to us right now on RMA and watching us as well on MBC TV. I'm Melling Baloo, and I was delighted to be your host for Le Mag. Bye bye. Have a great day.